Alright, so I am going to be starting to do some watercolor tutorials for those who are interested in doing some watercolors. I'm going to be making them pretty small, so I'll have a little paper here. I'll have an example of what I'm painting. Today we are going to be painting some leaves that my neighbor gave me. I believe that they are bay leaves. So I could be wrong. It was some kind of spice that you can dry out and then use later. But I've always liked it, and what I've been doing with it is just putting it in this jar, and it's been sitting in my windowsill. So it's been there, and it's all dry, but the colors are just so beautiful. The way that they dried are pretty amazing too. So I thought this would be my first watercolor tutorial that I do. I have lots of different types of watercolor paintbrushes that I'm going to be using. I'll be using a little teeny tiny brush, one that can pick up water pretty well, that's pretty flat, will be this one. My favorite brush is a round 8 brush. This is pretty worn out, but this is one of my favorite brushes. I have a larger brush that is about the same weight. I have a smaller brush in there, but you can use that if you'd like to. I also have one of these here. It's pretty frayed at the end, so I'll probably use that later. I don't think I'm going to use it for this one. And I have another round brush. Can you tell I like round brushes? So what we're going to do is we're just going to put those in water. I'm going to be getting my watercolor set a little bit more wet. You'll see that a lot of these colors are pretty mixed together. I like how messy my palette is because I can always pick up those colors later. So I have some wet brushes here. Typically you don't want to leave your brushes inside a cup of water for too long because they can take the adhesive off of the paintbrush and also on your brush bristles too. So I'm not going to leave them in. What I'll do is I'll clean them and put them off to the side. So I have my water. What I'm going to do first is I'm going to be spending some time just like grouping the leaves together, and then I'm going to start painting them. So I like it the most this way because you can see the different directions of the leaves. On this side you can only see the back side of the leaves, and I don't really want to do all of that, so I like this one right here. So there are 3 groups that I'm going to be doing. Here's one group, here's 2, and then here's the third. The third is just one leaf. When you're painting or drawing, you want to always come up with your composition first. So the first thing that I'm going to do is come up with my composition with my wet wash. Now, if you want to draw it out first, you could do that, but I kind of just go into it. I'm going to be tinting it a little bit with color. So I have water, and I have a pink color that I'm going to be using. So I'm going to start first with the branch that I'm going to be using. I'm going to go off to the side a little bit. Okay. And if there's a mistake, it's light enough where I can darken other parts of it, or it will be okay. So I'm going to group this. There's 1 leaf, there's 2, and then here's a third that's coming out, and then the 4th leaf is off to the side, and there's some negative space right here. I'm going to leave that alone. A lot of times artists say, like watercolor artists say, the hardest part of watercolor is to keep the white spots white. So in this painting, this part is going to be white. So it's starting to dry, even though it's really, really wet. So what you'd want to do, and what I like to do, is to dip my brush in a color. I'm going to be using like a bluish color to start off with. And stretch it out just a little bit more. And bring it up. I dripped a little bit up here, but I'm not going to touch that so that it can dry on its own. I'm going to bring the color over here, and then I'm going to thicken this part up a little bit. I'm looking off to the side of this, so the way that you're looking at it might be a little bit different than the way I'm painting it, only because it is off to the side. What I just did right there is I had like a little piece of fuzz that was messing up my painting a little bit with the way that the color was being put down. So what I did was I just stuck my finger down and picked it up, kind of like taking an eyelash out of your eye, for those of you who have ever had an eyelash in your eye before. Okay, so I'm just sharpening up some of the ends because I really like how pointy these leaves are. Okay, I'm going to do the same thing over here. I'm going to, but look, I have one here, one here, one here. So I have to make sure, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start off with this bottom one first. I'll do another one, and then another one coming up like that. Okay, and then I'm going to group all of these leaves together. Almost called them feathers. Leaves together. Making it a little bit smaller so it fits on my the shape of my paper better. This is Archer's watercolor paper, cold pressed, and I'll give you a link to that to buy some if you want to. I cut it up, especially if I'm just making small paintings. I don't tape it down. Doesn't tend to warp. This type of paper comes on a pad or in a pad, so it's put together so that it doesn't really need the taping down if you're working really, really large. Some of my paintings are pretty big. Let's see, this one goes up. Let's make this larger. And you'll see that I'm just drawing it out with the water. And then if I messed up, I'll let that dry and I'll try it again with another tint. Maybe I would use yellow. Kind of gives you some time to practice a little bit before you start working into your shape. So I'm gonna start adding in some blue into this like I did the other one. Alright, I'm going to leave that one alone for a little bit, and then I'm going to take that pink color that I did before. This one is going to be coming out of these leaves up here, and I'm going to bring it down. Might have made that a little bit big, but that's all right. It's practice, right? Okay, now what's happening is this part right here is still drying, but I do like to work in wet to wet. So I'm going to take some wet paint and I'm going to be playing around with the color just a little bit. I want a little bit more green in this. So I have this light green that I will be adding onto this. I'm not being very, I'm not going to be controlling where all this color is going right now. That's for later. So I'm just allowing the color to do whatever it's going to do on this paper. Some of you are going to have a hard time with that because you like to control where everything goes. But in watercolor, especially in the very beginning parts of it, you don't have to control it. It's going to look pretty no matter what. So all these little oozles that I've made are going to be shown. In the end, you'll be able to see some of them, but not all of them. Some of them I really, really like. Some of them might not be as pronounced as I need it to in the end. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to keep putting some oozles down, just these like blobs of color. We can call them blobs if you want to. So these big blobs of color, and then when I'm done blobbing it out, I am going to start adding in some other stuff. So I'm just going to keep doing that. I like to take lots of color from my palette, and I like to go along the edges. This is like the most fun, where you are adding color to the edge, and then it just keeps that really, really strong edge, but then it blends into everything else you do. That's really satisfying, as my kiddos like to say. I'm going to darken this one up a little bit more. And you'll notice that this leaf is on top right here. I'm going to go back in with some white watercolor and lighten it up over there. So this really isn't true to the colors that we see right now, but that is okay. If you want to try to match it a little bit closer, you really have to look at the colors that you see. I'm going to add in some pinks to this because there is some pink. And then add it in other areas, because we want to try to keep it consistent throughout your piece. You don't want to have just all this color here and then no color over here, unless it's intentional, and it has to look intentional, and that will look, you have to make it look nice for that part of it. So anyway, I'll go more over composition a little bit later. So yeah, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to let this dry and then come back into it. Another thing that you could do if you have way too much color in one area is you can clean a paintbrush, squeegee it out, okay, and then you can just touch the areas that you want to pick up the color, squeegee it out. And now that I've done that, I'm going to be using a hair dryer. So I'm just using a standard hair dryer. I'm going to put these off to the side so they don't like blow everywhere. I'll plug it in to my spot. I'm going to leave this available for myself as I work into this painting. So I'm going to just blow dry for a little while, and you probably want to hold it. Don't get too close to it. Now, if I did not pick up this portion of color right here, it would just spit out that way. So if you want to go for that look, that's great, but I don't want to do that for this painting. Now, sometimes if you start working into a painting and it's not completely dry, it starts making these shapes and just gets muddy. So one way to make sure that it's dry is to touch your painting, and if you feel any moisture, it's not dry. Another thing, if you touch it and it feels cold, it is not dry. So if it feels like the temperature of your paper when it's normal, it's not like really, really warm, but it's not cold to the touch. Okay, it's ready to start, or we are ready to start adding more color to this without it starting to ooze out into it. So we'll look at this piece again. We'll see that we can see a little bit of the leaf that's underneath it. I think it's a little bit more pointier that way. I can change that. This I can probably change a little bit, but I might have to keep it that way. I notice while looking at it, the stems are not as thin as I would like them to be. So we can use a little bit of white watercolor for going all the way around it. So I wouldn't like go over it and go like white it out. You have to make that look intentional in all places. So I might make it so it is a cast shadow. So I'll look into it when I start painting it again. Alright, so right now I'm going to be sectioning off my leaves that I have just to make sure that I can see them when I want to start rendering them. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to be adding, doing that same process, but I'm going to be doing leaf by leaf. And I'm going to be going, let's say like this one right here, I'm going to be going pretty dark on this side and really creating a hard line between these leaves and this leaf. Then I'm going to do this one, okay? And I'm making sure that I'm not doing anything that close to each other, because if I did something here and then I did something right here, this would start blending together. So I'm going to leave that after this dries. So you'll see what I'm talking about. So here we go. I'm making a line. Kind of goes in. So there's that leaf and then there's that leaf. And I'm going to, that's too dark. I'll use some blue for that. I'll just go ahead and make some hard lines. A little dark. I'm going to pick up some of that color so it doesn't go that dark. Okay, so what I'm doing is I'm going to clean my brush, dry it off a little bit, and carry that color in this direction. I'm drying it off of my pants. If you want to know why I wear dark clothes all the time, it's because I'm probably painting on myself. So a little bit more, and I'm going to pick up some more color. So I'll clean my brush, and then I dipped it back in. So now we have variation between these leaves and that leaf. Okay, and I'm going to do this one right here. I'm going to make it a little bit more pokey. at the tip. Okay. It's a little dark, so what I'm going to do is going to clean my brush, squeegee it off, and picking up some of that color. And if I wanted to, I can go back into this and add in some more splotches, some reds if I want to, but I'm just gonna leave it as is right now, just to get it to start looking like it's separated. Okay, now what we're gonna do is we're really gonna go around this leaf, but we're only gonna do that bottom leaf right here. So we're gonna paint two parts. This part right here, which is the shape that goes with the stem, and this part right here, which goes between this stem and this stem. So it's just that shape. So you want to be paying attention to the shapes that you're painting. So I'm going to start first by going in. Going a little bit further. So it's really showing off that leaf. I'm showing off that leaf by making this one a little bit darker. Okay, and I'm going to do something similar to this side right here. So we're going to have this stem going up here. I'm going to go back over that one so that it's not so pronounced. So there we go. So as of right now, we have this underleaf happening and it's being protruded. We're then going to go over here. We're going to demonstrate this leaf right here to really pronounce that top leaf. So here we go. And okay, last thing that we're going to do before we start drawing, I'm going to, let's see, can I do it? Nope. If I do any of that right now, it's going to bleed into each other, so I'm just going to leave that alone. And then I'm going to do this bottom leaf just a tiny bit. It goes in a different direction than I had it before. So it kind of goes up like this. So I'm just going to try to demonstrate as much as I can by covering up what I've done, because it was kind of a little bit of a mistake. But if you didn't see this, you probably wouldn't be able to find that mistake. And then it kind of goes down. Yep. And it goes like that. So I'm going to tighten this up just a tiny bit more. There we go. So I'm going to leave that alone and let it dry a little bit more. And then I'm going to mess with this a little bit, kind of make it a little more crinkly because it has a cooler shape than I've produced. So I'm going to go back in. I'm going to make it a little bit yellow the way I'm going to lay it down. And I'm going to kind of wiggle it out this way. Wiggle it out that way. Tighten that up just a little bit more. Okay. And then I'm going to get some of this color. All right. So again, let this dry a little bit, and then I will go back into like the next thing that I would do. Let it dry, then I would go in and darken this leaf a little bit so that this one really protrudes and goes, looks like it's coming closer to the viewer. So anything that's dark in a painting recedes, anything that's light comes forth. So this leaf right here will be coming forth. I will darken that part of the leaf because there's a leaf right here. I'm going to darken that part of the leaf so that one right here comes forward, and then this one too. This right here, I don't really particularly care for what's happening. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a little bit of water and pick up some of this color that I have. And if I need to go make it look a little bit lighter, I do have white watercolor. Typically artists don't really use white watercolor, but I really like to use it. So sometimes I use a little bit of gouache into it, and sometimes I use a little bit of just white watercolor with it, just to give it some texture and variation. So I'm gonna pick up a little bit more color. There we go. Okay, so I'm gonna let that dry like I've done before. I can use a hairdryer if I wish, but I'm gonna come back to this painting a little bit later. So. All right, so now I'm going to be going over some of the other leaves that I have not separated yet. I'm gonna go with a different shade or value of color. So I'm just gonna lay some of that color down, add a little bit of water, and just bring it off to the side. All right, and then I'm going to be fixing this leaf right here. So I'm going to be demonstrating that one by just doing something similar, just adding just a little bit of shading to it. It needs to be a little bit lighter than the one behind it, so if it looks like it's going to turn into that other color, what I'm going to do is I'm going to either lighten this leaf or darken the one behind it in the end. All right, so now that we have everything pretty much separated, I'm just gonna create a little bit more interest in this leaf right here and in this one too. I want to make this one a little bit darker on this side to create some value change. Okay. Now what I'm going to start doing is I'm going to be adding and sharpening up some edges. So let's start with this one right here. I'm going to be using white, but typically you're not supposed to be doing that in watercolor, but I made an error, and if you're ever able to avoid this, that would be a good thing. So I'm taking a lot of white, saturating my brush, and we're still going to be able to see quite a bit of the color still when it dries. When we lay it down, you can't see it very much, but you are going to be seeing quite a bit of that color still there, but the value of it kind of goes down a little bit. and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to create shadows to make it so it looks like that was intentional. And then as far as adding in the inside, like I would start off with we do that? We just did that one, so I'm going to leave that one alone. And we'll see how light the color is. We might have to go back over it again. This one might have to have a different shade to it to be able to see it, making it a little bit pink. I'll add a little bit of pink to this one too. And then that one's still wet, so I'm going to leave that one alone. I'm going to bring that up. And then you can start adding in the really teeny tiny lines as the white dries. So the teeny tiny lines, what I would do is I would flip this around in order to make it. I'm going to be using this teeny tiny brush. You can barely see it right now. I'm holding my breath as I start bringing those lines in. I don't know if you guys can hear that. That's my dog eating outside my door. It's breakfast. I started this painting last night and then came back to it this morning. Alright, so I think what I'm going to have to do is I'm going to have to go in and darken this leaf and then try this technique again because I can barely see it and I'm sure you're having a hard time just seeing it too. So that one has the veins from the leaf, but I'm going to try it on this side too. Go ahead and add that in. And you can see like these ones are drying and you can't really see it very well. So you can kind of go back into it. Another medium that you can use that I really like to use with watercolor, other than gouache and watercolor, would be tempera. So tempera is water base. Oh, those are looking nice. Our water base, and you are able to add white, and it pretty much stays true to whatever you're doing. Okay, I'm not going to go very, very close to this one because it's still wet. I love this little teeny tiny brush, it's so cute. Alright. This is probably not going to dry white, but if it does, I can go back over it with a dark wash. I'm just going to do two more. Boop, boop. Okay, now that we have that one, let's go ahead and make some leaves for this one right here. Did I say leaves? I meant veins. I don't know if I said leaves or not. And you can make some veins come out, like this one has veins coming out. If you want to try to make it so it looks like that, you can. You can hear my dog wanting to get in right now. That's Tiggy. I apologize for that. Okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to let this dry and see what it looks like, just to see like how well the white picked up everything. And then I'm going to add more veins, create more shading. This one, it's a little bit of negative space from that part to that part, so I'm going to tighten this up just a little bit. So this is going to be the stem and this is the leaf condition. Okay, and then let's do this one just because it's pretty dark and we'll be able to see it, which will be nice. He really wants to come in here. I don't know if you have a little whiny dog like mine, but typically if he's crying, he gets what he wants. I know that's sad, but I mean, I just had the door closed so that they could eat. All right, so I'm gonna let this dry a little bit and then I'm gonna come back to it. Okay, so the next thing that I'm going to do is go in and darken in some spots just to accentuate some of these veins. And then I might go back in and just soften some of the shadows and just really just put in some details to this. So I'm using a warm red wash, with a little tint of green into it so it almost turns into a brown, to add in and make it have additional dimension to this. Alright, so I'm going to go over a few more areas and touch them up. So I'm going to kind of freestyle it while I'm finishing this up. I'm going to use a lot of white in order to do this, just to create some value changes between the stems and the leaves and all of that. And I will take suggestions as far as what should be the next watercolor project. You can send me a photograph of something that you are interested in. I'd be more than happy to look at that. But yeah, I'm just gonna freestyle it a little bit just to get some lines going. Another thing that a lot of my students use when they're doing their like highlights is a jelly roll pen. So if you have like a really, really strong highlight that you would like to put into your work, you could do that with a jelly roll pen. But I'm trying to avoid that right now. And just add in with some lines from my white paint. And that will, I mean, it won't be like really, really bright white, but will give it some value changes that are needed in this. I realize that the light is off to the side, so I'm having a hard time seeing everything that I'm doing. Wash works really well for highlights too, and that's pretty opaque. I have some gouache in one of my drawers. I should get it out. But I'm going to see what this looks like first. All right, so my video cut out just a little bit on my the last little section that I did. But what I'm doing is I'm darkening the background, even though that it's not that dark back here. I'm making it pretty dark, and I'm lightening up a few things. So I really want the leaves to look like they're standing out. So I'm going to lighten those up a little bit, and then I want the paper and the shadows to recede. So I've enlarged some of them just to use my own artistic license. And then I am making some, I'm exaggerating and darkening and lightening some areas for my artistic license as well. So that's what I'm doing. I'll be doing that for the next few minutes, and then I'll be posting this as soon as I'm finished. So yeah. So this is not very light, so I'm going to lighten that up a little bit. And that's not going to dry as light as I had it on there. All right, so you'll notice that this doesn't look exactly like the leaves. I took my idea of the leaves, started painting them, and then added some arbitrary colors, meaning not from life, and started painting what I felt I would like to see in this piece. There's thunder happening, probably heard that earlier. Guess I'm not gonna be swimming today. Okay, so this is pretty much finished. I might add in a few more details to it. But yeah, if you'd like to do this painting and you're stuck at all, please email me and I would be happy to help you with that. I will show you my finished product in the last still scene of this. So I'm gonna let this dry a little bit. I think I'm gonna go over this one. I think I'm gonna do the same thing I did here, which was I added some turquoise blue to that and then added drips of white. I think I'm gonna do that too. So yeah, and if at any point you wanna try using this pen, it's called a Jelly Roll pen. I purchased it just in case I'd want to do that to some of my pieces. So I might like test it out in some, here I'll test it out and see what it looks like. See if it actually does anything. Yeah, it does. So maybe I'll do some highlights here and there with that. Okay, well thank you for painting with me today and I look forward to seeing what you guys come up with your leaf painting.